George, it's good to see you again.
Likewise, dude. Thanks for having me back 3 times on the trot.
I know the endurance continues.
Yes.
For this finale, we're going to get to the real meat of it. We talked about why comedy is so important, why humor can actually help you in your business. But today we're going to talk about how to do it, how someone, an outsider like me, could learn it and start to apply it. So that's the big question we're going to answer. First, I'm going to, and then there's a comedy problem I'm going to ask you to have you solve on the fly. Okay. I legitimately want to solve this for a problem I'm having in life, but I think it'll be great to just on the fly see what comes out of your brain at the moment.
Interesting.
But before we get into that, I want to understand a little bit more about the theory of comedy by asking about how you learned everything. Let's start with how you studied comedy and what were the things that you found worked great and what were the things that you found just weren't helpful at all?
Interesting. Yes. That's a really good question. So, like I said before, I guess I've never studied it formally in the sense that I don't have a qualification, but in terms of how I learned to be in a double act or learn to be in a team of improvisers trying to improvise, learn to write shows and kind of structure a comedy show, like figuring out the meta of what we were even trying to do in a comedy show. I think a lot of it was, kind of exposure from an early age. I think maybe there's just a personality thing where some people won't care so much about this. Or it may just depend what your parents showed you when you were a kid. But I think, yeah, they really did. And my mum was an actor when she was younger, like when she was in London, in her sort of teenage years, early 20s. She was an actress, but she always had like a real thing for comedy. And I think I've in the years since being born, obviously most things I remember are after that point. I remember seeing footage of her, even outside, she was in the West End. She was doing proper London stuff, but she also was doing stuff with close friends, in these it's quite a tradition in the UK to have theaters above pubs. I don't know if that's as much of a thing with theaters attached to bars. Yeah, it's really cool. Well, of course, sorry, theaters always will have a bar, but it's a real thing. Like a cozy little pub with a theater on top of it is this real thing. And she did loads of comedy stuff when she was growing up. And I think as a result of that, either being exposed to the way she talks about things, and then physically seeing the footage of her doing that kind of stuff, that was her personality. My dad's also a great storyteller, and they just let me watch a lot of varied comedic stuff when I was younger. And so I think a lot of it, maybe is it nature or nurture, who knows, but being exposed to that stuff at a young age, I think was probably quite helpful.
Yeah. So in everything we do, it's a strong element of whoever loves it the most, even if you have terrible talent, they're going to end up pretty good because they're going to put so much into it. But also the whole idea of being born around it. There's a lot of skills that people say just can't be taught. And I'm really passionate that they freaking can. We just get level 1 from growing up with your parents, like dance or singing. And then we only know how to teach level 5 through 10.
Yes.
But that sounds like a really good start, that you would have a baseline learning from your mom and your dad, and you have this love in your heart. It sounds like in your history, there was a time you were going to college that you're kind of, I'm going to take this more seriously. I really want to make this happen. Did you start putting on the afterburners then to improve it?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I realized I sort of strayed from your original question, which was then what worked and kind of what didn't. I think so. I think looking back, I discovered I was actually with my parents this weekend and discovered this sort of backlog of comic books that I'd drawn when I must have been 10 or 11 or something like that.
Oh, cool, dude.
It was really cool, actually. I was quite proud of my old self because I really committed to some of these things. And I don't think I did more than about 5, maybe 6 issues of a single character before I got bored and moved on to another one. But there was a lot of stuff there, but there were little jokes in there which are not great, for someone who was that young. But I noticed that I was sort of trying that stuff out, and then as I built towards got older and moved towards college, that same thing flipped and applied to writing comedy sketches. And I didn't really have like a religious schedule with which I would write them, but I had this sense in my mind that like when I go to college, I want to join like the student radio or something and start doing radio comedy or something like that. And so I wanted to make sure I'd gotten the reps in before I went, writing sketches for myself. And so like, yeah, wrote all those sketches myself, recorded myself doing all the characters, modulated my voice to sound like different, like, you know, male characters, female characters. Yeah, and so like I look back on that and I think, yeah, there was definitely a period of trying to be more structured with it and thinking, okay, I want to write a sketch this week before the week is over. Which meant then I guess when I got to college, there was then like I felt like I had some momentum going into it, and I felt like I had the beginnings of a comedic voice. And so then when that structure that I tried to give myself a bit was formalized, and I was suddenly surrounded by, you know, workshops that would happen every week and other people who would be like, well, okay, cool, you're going to write for this show, we need a sketch every week if the show's going to happen. The afterburners were kind of forcibly put on. So like in terms of what you were originally asking about, like kind of what works and what doesn't, I don't know if I have a concrete answer for that. I just think that I figured out that stuff faster by just doing it more religiously. And it felt like with anything, the kind of the testing reduced the guesswork going forwards. Does that make sense?
I hear what you're saying. When I was studying writing, there was a lot of advice: just get more experience, write more. And that made things worse and worse for me. There was a certain level of knowledge I needed to have that the practice actually started improving my work instead of making it worse.
Yeah, okay.
So I wonder how much of this applies there. Were there any things that felt like dead ends for you that didn't work that someone could skip?
It's a good point. I mean, I think there was a certain period where like certain childish traits had to kind of be drummed out of me. And so like, I mean, here's the thing, like there was a really strange full circle in like the worst possible way moment recently where my kind of childhood double act heroes, Mitchell and Webb, came back after 15 years to do a sketch show together, which again, they had still worked together on other things. But like I'd loved everything that these guys had done pretty much. And they came back together for this sketch show, and it was I just didn't like it. And I think the overall feeling from a lot of people is that it just lost an edge in some way. And for me, that edge came down to the sort of thing that I feel like someone in their 80s would like tell me off for when I was younger. And I would go like, what a ridiculous criticism. It's just who I am. But they were swearing like all the time. That the only thing like that you could guarantee in any sketch is that they would just like swear. And there would be kind of shock value in place of genuine scene building. And you would know what the joke was from like the first 5 seconds. And then it's just them just saying it over and over again for the next 5 minutes. And so in terms of things that I guess I've figured out don't work, it's like shock value for the sake of shock value. It's like gunning for the joke, and maybe this came up in a previous conversation we had, but going for the joke over building the story, like trying to get the one-liner rather than actually serve the scene. I remember there was this sketch that I wrote once that I thought had like real promise at the start, where I mean, you may think, why on earth did you think this sketch had real promise? What on earth is this sketch? But it was that a character like goes into like a normal cafe, but for some reason the waiter is like pronouncing everything a little bit strangely. And I think I had this image that I was going to like write it and figure out at some point the clever reason why the waiter was pronouncing stuff really weirdly. And I just couldn't. And so the sketch ended up being just like a load of characters saying stuff weirdly for basically shock value and like weird value. But then I couldn't think of the justification for it, and so we scrapped it, and it never got. I don't think I even submitted it to the writers' room in the end because I just thought this is awful. And so yeah, those would be the things. Like if you're just doing shock value for the sake of it, you're not thinking about what the story is. That can often fall flat. Don't swear just for the sake of it. And much like we learn when writing YouTube scripts, Ethan, if you give the payoff in the first 5 seconds and then just talk about it for the next 2 minutes, it's just not engaging anymore. And that's kind of what it feels like this latest series was, which was a real shame for me. And I don't think it's nostalgia. I just think it sucked. And I'm really sad that it did.
That is really interesting, because the whole don't put the payoff at the beginning is something that sounds natural, but was such a complete mind blowing. I would have never guessed that on my own. And then once you know it, it seems that would be automatically applied to all parts of your life. So the fact that you ran into that again in another art form is fascinating.
There you go. Those connections you assure me are there continuously seem to crop up.
Yeah. Well, learning for yourself seems to be one level. As I've geared up to started to teaching speaking skills, it's admitted like, holy crap, I knew nothing before. Teaching is so much harder. You actually started teaching other members of the troupe and helping other people develop their comedy skill. Same question for that. What did you learn that worked for teaching others, and what did you learn? This is great comedy, but for teaching someone else, it's just not helping them at all.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, and here's where another one of these kind of YouTube writing principles comes back in. I think maybe I'm just finding these connections because it's easier to say that they exist than that they don't. But I think, like anything, a really well done YouTube video, you look at it and you think, holy moly, how on earth did they know to like say that then, and then do this editing effect, and then this lighting, and then bring in this music here? It's like, it's so complex. But much like, I guess the idea of evolution is that you might look around and think, my goodness, how on earth did this happen? Like, a tree is so beautiful. Why does it look like that? Or this animal is so beautiful. Why does it look like that? How did we develop the ability to breathe, or like any of this stuff? And the best way of it, getting it explained is that it's like complexity from simplicity. And when you go back and back and back, and you kind of look at the core components of, oh, okay, this was like a very, very not retrograde, what's the word I'm looking for? Rudimentary sort of way that a life form would have breathed 2 million years ago or whatever. And I can see then from that like how that progresses over time. And it's much the same with watching a YouTube video that looks incredibly complex, and much the same with comedy, is that when you sort of step back and back and back and back, and you start learning these things from these really, really specific like kind of core structures, suddenly a group of people who step on stage get given a suggestion that seems insane, and yet somehow manage to turn it into an incredibly compelling scene about like a donut that's enchanted. You start to think, oh, actually, that's how I can sort of see how they've been able to do that, because they're using these kinds of core frameworks. So as an example, like one thing, like I remember when I used to watch the improv troupe doing their improv before I joined it and like auditioned to get in and then got in, it just seemed like magic. And this was student improv, so it wasn't even that good. Sometimes I thought it was pretty good, but in any case, it seemed like, how the hell do you do that? And then you start looking into the theory of it, and you realize that there are different structural frameworks you can apply to a scene. So I keep saying, for example, they're not giving one. An example is something called, I believe the structure is ERCER, environment, relationship, conflict, escalation, resolution. And I didn't get taught any of that until I started doing the improv myself. And then you get into the troupe, and then you start focusing on these kinds of structures. And so when you have something like that, all of a sudden, and the feeling of stepping onto stage and having no idea what's going on or what you're going to say, when it feels like it's an endless list of possibilities, is terrifying. Yeah. But as soon as you know, okay, environment, relationship, those are like the first two things. I got to think, okay, all I need to do initially, I don't need to try and be funny. I don't need to try and do anything else. I just need to establish, where are we? Who am I? Who is she? How do we know each other? What's, what are those real sort of bedrock factors in this scene? And you
those one at a time. You don't have to have everything out of your head instantly.
No, absolutely not. Environment, relationship really have to come first, because if your audience is watching and you're kind of just like trading vaguely funny lines, trying to like one up each other, you're thinking, this isn't compelling because I don't know like what your relationship is or why this is relevant. So you get that out of the way, and then you start going through them sequentially. Conflict. Okay, so the characters are in a bakery and like they've just opened the bakery, say. That's like what's been established. They're two fellow bakers. They're in a bakery. It's day one, starting the bakery. Then there's some conflict. The dough hasn't arrived on time, or it has arrived, but it's rotten or whatever. And then, so like that helps us now. Okay, we don't need to worry about who we are anymore, but we can progress into this conflict. Now, how do we escalate it? How do we take this in a direction that the audience isn't necessarily expecting? And then eventually, like, I can't, my skills are clearly not honed these days because I can't think how I would then resolve this terrible situation in the bakery. But you escalate it, and then somehow, hopefully really satisfyingly, you discover that, say, the oven that you've got is perfect for just this kind of rotten dough, and you manage to bake a piece of bread at the end, which everyone loves, or something like that. So you're going through this arc of these different things that you already know at the start. Whatever the suggestion is, I'm going to be able to like sub in to those different parts of the framework. So that's how that stuff was taught to me. There are loads of different frameworks I could go into. But it's like breaking down this magical seeming thing into just focus on these few things, and the scene will develop. And after a few months, you won't even realize you're doing it. It'll just happen.
That sounds really cool, and also makes sense. Where from the audience, it looks like complete chaos and how is it going, but they feel it had this progression somewhere because you were following that kind of hidden arc behind it.
Exactly. And the more you do it, the more you start to see even the very best improvisers. There's a system going on, always. And there are certain improv troupes, like the real sort of big ones in the UK. There's a troupe called Showstopper who do an improvised musical, and so they've got like a band that's improvising, and they're singing songs that they've never sung before. It's absolutely mind-blowing. But even them, you start to spot, okay, I've seen them 2 or 3 times. They always follow this kind of a structure. It doesn't take away from how incredibly impressive it is, but you start to see it. And I guess it makes sense, right? You've got to be able to teach some sort of underlying principles to anything. Otherwise, you're just saying, go out, good luck, rely on your brain working at 100% capacity and see what happens.
So you're able to teach those frameworks to the other people and the newer members.
Yeah.
Was there anything different you did when you were teaching to do the improv side versus scripted scenes?
A good point. I think there I probably have to defer to my comedy partner, who was the kind of the head of writers there and was more focused on that stuff. Like I very much took a kind of by a backseat, as in like a student's role with him, and let it, because he was the one who was.
Give him a shout out.
His name's Ollie Jones. We have a TikTok called Jackman and Bones, which was imaginatively coined by simply moving the first letter of both our surnames to the other person's surname. And I think we said that in like a random Facebook message, which is like, should we just do Jackman and Bones for now? And it's now 7 years later, and we never changed it. It works. It does just kind of work. But yeah, he's great. Like he kept the TikTok going for a long, long time. Because I don't live in London now, so it's harder for us to film stuff. But yeah, he I think is really good with the kind of structures behind writing. I can only speak to how I've tried to teach writing for YouTube, which is obviously very, very different. But for improv, certainly, and I probably for comedy more broadly, I think it's about teaching the person to feel relaxed and just a bit more comfortable, because that feeling, like I said, of stepping on stage and it seeming like infinite possibilities, much like opening a blank Word document and it feeling like, holy hell, infinite possibilities, where do I go? I need to just like write something. I need to do something quickly. I'll just try and write it before I start overthinking it. Just type. And it's stress. Much the same with the comedy. You want people to be able to step on stage, even if they're new, and think the pressure is not on me and me alone to make a joke right now. Like there could be 2, 3, 4 back and forths where we're just scene building before one of us has to make a joke. And I think the same applies to conversation and like coming across well in a conversation. I think you can sense the people who are anxious to be liked or anxious to try and be funny, not necessarily out of any sort of being self-obsessed, but probably out of insecurity or whatever else. To like, they want to like get a joke in quickly to establish, don't worry, I'm chill, I'm cool, I'm funny, I made you laugh, like don't worry about it. Whereas actually just allowing a few moments to pass where you're just like building a connection with somebody before feeling like, and waiting for the right moment to kind of drop a joke in. I think it's the same thing there. And that helps if you can just feel relaxed and not like self-conscious about being funny immediately. Do you know what I mean?
being able to hear what the people around you are feeling and make something together instead of just pushing something completely out to solve your own feelings is one of the most cornerstone things of speaking skills that I'm.
Is it really?
Others. Yeah. It's
Interesting.
the listening skills that you're able to learn from your writing course has been so helpful in speaking as well. Because you immediately go, oh, here's all of my stuff. I can put that in a pocket. Oh, now I got room to, oh, this is what these people are feeling. It's so obvious what to say together. And,
Yeah. I love that. That's really nice. It kind of takes something out from between you and just allows more of a normal connection. I like that.
Well, the goal is to take your deep knowledge and then find a way to lead us into how to apply it for very beginners. But there is one question I want to ask you on the theory that you have built up and know a lot about. How would you compare the value in comedy and humor of the writing versus the delivery of it? Or is it purely just a matter of it's a bottleneck of whichever one you're best at?
That's a really, really good question. I mean, there's clearly either can make or break whether or not the sentence goes well, the joke goes well, the conversation goes well, the interaction goes well. I think ultimately the kind of the structure of what you've written probably needs to be right. Fundamentally, I'm trying to think if you flip it both ways around, could a poorly structured sentence delivered well bring the house down in the same way that a poorly delivered but well structured sentence, like, could they both, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Am I making sense? Like, is there one that is, are they both necessary but not sufficient? Or this is me literally thinking out loud. What I'm imagining now, I'm imagining a thought experiment. Somebody has been like given a fantastic joke on a piece of paper, and all they have to do is walk on stage and like deliver it to an audience. And now I think about it, if the delivery is bad, which results in more spine-breaking cringe? Would it be somebody delivering it badly? Now I think about it, I'm starting to think the delivery is probably more important, because I think someone who, and I've seen this, like when I've watched comedians do their kind of work in progress sets where they'll like go up and they'll have a bunch of material. They say up front, like, this isn't all going to work. This is for me to figure out what works. Let's go for it. They'll say something that is like not that funny, but then they'll kind of be able to cover for it in the delivery, or in the moment of awkward silence, would-be awkward silence. They follow up with something else that like acknowledges the discomfort everyone is feeling, and then it recovers it. And so now I'm thinking this through. I think delivery is probably more important, because like, you could give someone a line from Monty Python, and if they're like, the parrot is dead, it's an ex-parrot, it's like, doesn't mean anything. Whereas when it's delivered by John Cleese, it works. So is that the conclusion you were hoping I would end up at for a point you'd like to make?
I'm trying to make a business selling speaking skills, so I am definitely buying.
That's true.
The answer is delivery, which is why I wanted an outsider's opinion.
Yeah, dude, that was so organic as well, because I started that with a presupposition that structure is more important, but actually, the more I thought about it, like, totally, delivery is everything.
Yeah, I have you on film agreeing with me. This is freaking amazing.
Yeah. Use it. Put it on the website. Whatever you need to do.
So I completely think so too. Where a good joke helps a lot, but as an American, you're starting to notice this a little bit because your travel. If you bring somebody with a Scottish accent, does not matter what they say. It is funny to us. We are having a great time. Never leave.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, I get that, and I think you're right. Even it's not quite the inverse, but I think we receive here in the UK, we receive an American accent just differently. There are like different, I guess there are different, presuppositions again of like what's funny there, and you're almost immediately thinking like, oh, is this going to land over here? And then when it does, it's like you're doubly happy because you're like, oh, I feel so good for this person who is like not originally from here, but is like trying to be funny here, and it's gone well. It's like doubly exciting. So yeah, you're just loaded with these these presuppositions.
All right, cool. Well, let's move on to like the core, the most
Yeah.
important question of the day, the most useful thing for everybody else. What is the smallest unit of humor that someone could start off with to use? I
Mm.
have in my mind, we'll call this guy Justin. And he's
Okay.
not much of a joker, doesn't have a lot of experience. He didn't have funny storytelling parents. And he's going to go into a room full of random employees. He doesn't know who these people are. It could be any culture or anything. And it has to have a certain level of safe professionalism. But he knows that storytelling is a big help. And he knows that starting whatever he says with some humor at the office will, it's kind of like give him an extra life, where if he screws up one part
Mm.
or gets really rambling one part, people will forgive that one because he did some sort of humor at the beginning. What's the
Mm.
smallest, easiest thing in humor that we could try to teach Justin so he could get in, get out, have success,
Yeah.
and just add something to it?
I love that. That's such a good question. And I think that this, if everyone had a great answer for this and was sort of armed with this, imagine the net difference to the world if like everyone just made a 10% better impression the first time they met
Yeah.
someone.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So I don't wish to be obtuse in answering this question, but I watch me be obtuse. Um, the I was thinking about this a lot because like you thankfully gave me the heads up about this question before the conversation, and I was thinking about the fact that it probably looks a bit different depending on who you are, and this comes back a little bit to what we were saying before and what I was saying about finding the simplicity in the complexity and having structures to kind of guide you when you're writing or when you're improvising or whatever else. And I think one thing I've definitely noticed about people in general, and particularly I think back to my improv troupe and the people that were there and how different everyone was, is that everyone kind of had their thing that they could lean on in terms of their personality and what they was good at, but it maybe took them a little bit long to figure out what that was. So most people would start like the first time you'd see them get up and improvise, they would all be desperate to be the first person to make a joke and to be as funny as possible and to be the funniest person in the scene. And over time, you'd see people find where they resided best. And there's one guy that comes to mind, a guy called Alex, who was like this really just like brilliantly creative, but slightly bizarre guy who he had like, he almost like didn't blink. And he would kind of he'd go up on stage and in complete sort of contravention of the ERCER rule we spoke about earlier, like he wouldn't define who he was in the scene. He would kind of like go up and he'd sort of almost like mime, kind of just like look around like this, and like he'd spot the other character and then he'd like kind of like beckon them over or something like this. And all this time, like it's sort of he almost left it to the other person to define who he was in the scene. And I am coming back to a point with this, I promise. But then maybe he'd say like one line and then he'd run off, and then someone else would come on and the scene would continue. And he might do that 2 or 3 times in a scene. Like he'd just be kind of odd, and then he'd have this like one line and then he'd go. But when he said that one line, it just would bring the house down, because it was like this dramatic tension had been built up with like who his character was, and he had that patience and that calm to wait for the moment to deliver what that line was going to be. So he is a very particular archetype, and everyone who I remember from that troupe, and I think about it in terms of my friends as well, everyone has their kind of their strong suit and that kind of, let's call it like a structural crutch to lean on, in terms of where their strong suit resides in comedy. For me and my comedy partner, it's like we have, probably inspired by various different people, we'll just do this thing where I can't quite describe it, but it's almost like he'll say something, I'll repeat almost the same thing. He'll repeat it back with like a slight change. I'll repeat it back with a slight change. And it's like we go through this phase, so I hope, of it's like funny, stops being funny, then becomes funny again because it becomes so kind of absurd or whatever. And everyone has this structure. Everyone has this like thing that they naturally do. And so in terms of that smallest unit of comedy, I can't say what that would look like for everyone, but I think in the same way we're trying to avoid stepping onto that stage and feeling like there's a million possibilities, try and figure out what your strong suit is. Are you someone who can like turns a bit of self-deprecation into a joke, or you can say, I don't know, compliment somebody else's tie and then look at your own and think like you say, I wish I knew your tailor or something like that, whatever it might be, where you're making the other person feel good and you're sort of self-deprecating a bit. Maybe you're just the person who doesn't say much until they spot their opportunity, and then they come out with an absolute zinger that makes people think, oh man, he was really quiet for the first half an hour, but then he said this thing and he was like my favorite guy at the conference or whatever. So I guess I kind of made my point. I think it could look different for everyone, but figure out what your structure is and be okay to just like lean into that structure. Don't feel like you have to be the stand-up comedian. Just do what kind of suits your disposition. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Big or small, just feel what it is that you enjoy or you gravitate to. And don't worry about trying to make it be something. Just lean into the thing that's naturally you. It's going to have more of an effect because it's sincere.
Exactly. I think so. But I'm curious, because my answer was obtuse. Is there something like a specific technique that you had in mind when you were asking that question, that like, that is the smallest unit of comedy, that's how you do it?
Well, the best part of my conversations with you is you always come up with an answer that's completely different than the question I was even thinking.
Derails the conversation.
Yeah, if I could just say, here's the question, here's the answer, I could just do that with ChatGPT. You're like, oh, that's a good answer, question. But actually, the question you should be asking is about 18 degrees this direction. I was like, oh, that is freaking good. Yes.
Well, that's very gracious of you.
I will say that what I've come up with, just really briefly, so we can get on to the bigger parts, including the lecture I had last night, is there's a line between comedy and humor, and you can just be a little bit playful. I was talking with Vin Jang from Stage Academy. You know, I think the world of him, and he had his guest host, Andrew. Man, I'm blanking his name. I rehearsed it. Anyway, I'll get it by the show notes. And Vin said, all you have to do is make it an invitation to play. That's all you're really going for. Because people look in the audience, like your coworkers or the people in the meeting, like, well, he's trying to make me happy. And if he screwed it up, you're like, I kind of feel like I want to get his back now. That was cool that you tried. And they said you could break it down to just body language, just voice. So if, Justin here has no humor at all, or he just hasn't had time to figure out what he resonates with, just walk in and be like, so Vegas. It's not even a joke, but clearly he's like a little bit playful and like, yeah, we're all in Vegas. We're like, oh, it's kind of wild, whatever. Now to the third quarter results. That is a teeny little thing you could do. A derringer of an attack.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. That's an invitation to play is definitely it.
Andrew Tarvin said to just do the triplet structure, say two things that are similar and then have a surprise third one. He says it's the easiest thing to get somebody warmed up to doing. Doesn't take a lot of brain power. And like you said, structure. It's a bite-sized structure, so someone can figure it out quickly.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really... So two things, as in you would like agree with two things they say and then like twist the third thing, and like how would that look in practice?
So it'd be something like, well, obviously I'm here to get you informed on how the company's doing, get your morale up so you work hard, and not eat all the food in the room. Like, oh.
I see. Yeah, I like that. That's cool.
Dumb and stupid and not productive. That was surprising.
Yeah. No, that's really fun, actually. Yeah. Rule of three is also a thing that comes up everywhere, like across everything. And I guess it makes sense. It's like two things that establish the pattern in your brain, and your brain loves structure, etc., and then you break it, right?
Exactly.
That's cool.
So I love it. I appreciate you giving me that extra slice. The idea of focusing more on what you're pulled to instead of trying to fit in anyone's bucket, I think that's huge. Overlying. Now, are you ready to be Dr. Blackman?
I hope so. I've been training for this at least for the last 33 minutes. Let's go for it.
This is something legit I really want help with. It's not just, oh, that'll make me more funny. This will impact a whole lot of my life if I can find a solution to this. And
cool.
It'll also be fun to see how you think through things on the fly.
Sure. Let's do it.
So the question I have is, I have a problem with self-deprecating humor. Despite being an American, self-deprecating humor is the default that everybody in the state that I grew up in uses. And
Interesting. Okay. I need
yeah,
to move there. Sounds like a piece of home.
there's a lot of pros to it, but there's a lot of times where I'll use it and I'll notice that people have this kind of like negative, uncomfortable
Mm,
reaction. Well, the biggest problem is because this is my default. This is what comes out whenever I'm under stress or in a hurry,
mm.
which is when most humor is happening.
Yeah.
And an example, I'll be at the gym, and the instructors are always trying to crack jokes with you, and you're like, "Oh, I'm trying not to die. I don't remember my
Yes.
name." And the joke always comes out self-deprecating, like, "Oh, I suck. I can't lift much." And the guy's like, "I'm trying to build you up. Why do you make me?"
Mm,
Anyway, the core thing I'm trying to get to is I understand when is it going to have a negative reaction that I would try to avoid, and then two, the most important part, how could I switch to something else? What else could I do that would work? Because going the
mm.
opposite of going, I'm the best person ever, that's even worse.
Yeah, yeah. I totally get that. I mean, you may have asked the complete wrong person because I think I suffer with this as well, but I think we can workshop it together. Wait, look, see, okay, maybe that's an example. I was like, hey, look, me too. I also suck, but positively, I think we can get through it together. Maybe there's an answer in the structure of what I just said.
Hmm.
But I'm trying to think through the scenarios in my life when that has happened. I think in the US, I am more conscious of it because yeah, like on the whole, a lot more positive out there about everything from what I can see. Like, I guess big stereotype, but I've been to, I don't know, 7, 8 different states, and I found it to be very much the same. And I feel empowered by that when I'm there. It actually stops me from being as self-deprecating because you kind of mirror what's around you.
The southern
I
states are
suppose.
much better.
Really, that's so interesting. Yeah, I guess I assumed like it was the same absolutely everywhere. Um, but the scenarios in which you don't want to be, I suppose it's so hard. It depends on the exact context. But did we use the word mood hoover on one of these calls, or was this
Oh,
on
I made an AI photo.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, of course. Yeah, dude, I'm forgetting whether that was on one of these conversations or it may have been on an office hours call that we did.
Hmm.
But I suppose it's like figuring out the line of when, like, where is the thrust of this conversation going with the person or people that I'm with, and is there kind of momentum building, and will my self-deprecating humor like bring that momentum to a bit of a halt? Whereas the times when I think I would be more willing to do it as like almost to elevate somebody else to bring if I can see that there isn't momentum and that they're struggling with something or they're being down on themselves. I might try and like big them up on one hand, but also this may not be healthy. I'm not saying this is the right way to do it, but kind of lower myself with some self-deprecation to be like to just show a level of community and be like, you and I are in this together. And I'm trying to figure it out, and I know you can as well.
Hmm.
Whereas if everyone's being super, super positive, maybe it's like your trainer is being like, come on, Ethan, you rock at this. And that's the momentum that's kind of pushing one way. And then
Hmm.
self-deprecation may grind that to a halt. That's the mental model
Hmm.
I can think of.
The direction is a yes, but instead of a yes, and. I see what you're saying
Yes,
there.
yeah, exactly that. That's another enormous connection. I think that's exactly it. Yeah, I could now wax lyrical about that in an improv scene. Yeah, totally.
I like that. Again, it comes back to the whole listening skills of being able to eyeball, okay, how everyone's feeling. Do they want to build on this? And is my reaction going to build with that? Or am I talking down to myself instead of saying friendly and humble? It's going to feel like I'm just cutting off what they're trying to push.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like this is actually something I've been working on doing more recently myself because where I live, which is just south of London, I think the perception that it has, certainly among my friends and among maybe a lot of people, is that it's like it's an old people's town, which it demonstrably is not. But that is the kind of the stereotype that comes along with it. And I feel myself, and me and my partner, we both express this all the time. Whenever we go up to see our friends, there is this inexorable pull towards ending any reply to the question, how is it down there? We always feel like we have to end it by saying, but it's full of old people. But sure, I feel like we're old before our time. Oh God, it feels like we're about to retire. But but this. rather than just being able to say what we feel, which is, gosh, we prefer it. It's so much less stressful than London. It's cheaper than London. People are nicer than in London. There's plenty to do. You just haven't Googled it. And I like it. And I'm not moving back. And I think you're a bit crazy for living in London. That's what we want to say. But what we say is, yeah, it's okay. But, well, you know, what are we like? I've barely got any hobbies these days. Living next to a married couple in their 50s. What do you expect? I'm like, why do we do that? We like being here. Why don't we just say that? So I guess that's the other thing. It's about being truthful, I guess. We have the mental model we just discussed with the like momentum thing. But I think on the other side of it, it's like, I think we would do it to lower ourselves for reasons I can't quite explain. What I was saying just now, like you might try and lower yourself to make someone who's struggling feel like on a level footing, and like then we can rise up together. But I don't know what that instinct is to lower myself against somebody. I think it's like almost preempting their opinion, because you're getting in your head and thinking they think I'm weird and old for moving out of London, and so it's like you're getting there before they can. And I think that's
what they can say.
Yeah, exactly. So avoid that, I guess. Just be true to yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot that I can try in there.
Yeah. I guess I'm thinking in your scenario, if it's like your trainer's saying, come on, Ethan, push the bar up, you can do it just like another couple. And you're thinking, maybe, oh, sure, but look at you with your massive biceps and your pectoral muscles bigger than the whole of Nashville. Look at me with my regular sized body, although you are looking quite trim. You know what I mean? Like that's the exactly. That would be my instinct, is almost to be like, oh, I'm lesser than you. This is why I'm doing this. Like I suck. You could easily push this bar up. And I guess I just try to be true to myself, which is that no, I'm proud of myself for being here, and I'm gonna freaking push this bar up. And if I don't, at least I tried my best. This is what I'm going to try and embody, but I'll obviously fail and continue self-deprecating.
I'm trying to steer out of it. So this is interesting to know that this is something we can work on together. If I come up with ideas, I will just send you a message like, hey, this worked. Everyone was smiling instead of feeling sad for me.
Yes, love it. Yeah, we need to do like a swipe file of structures of self-deprecating or otherwise to use in specific scenarios, and then just use ChatGPT to sub in our own scenarios to it.
Yeah,
I'll give that a go.
All right. Well, paying attention to time, I wanted to make sure to ask, sure, did you want to talk about that Netflix documentary that you mentioned?
Yeah, sure. Just a final thing, really, just as a kind of a link back to, I think it was the second conversation we had where we spoke about, why humor can be used, or why it tends to be so useful in helping have more difficult conversations, because it allows you to kind of dip your toes in the lava a tiny bit, but with the knowledge that like, hey, I can still be lifted out of this with a little bit of levity, a little joke. And literally that same evening after we concluded the call, went downstairs, made some dinner, and then my partner and I watched this Netflix documentary called Group Therapy, which came out this year, 2025. Yeah, it's very interesting. Neil Patrick Harris was hosting it. I didn't really know many of the comedians on it, although they are all quite big in America. I think there's just so many American comedians that they were just lesser known to me. But all of them just talking about stuff that had happened in their lives, but through the lens of comedy, and having a room of people who all of them have, like 20 plus years experience being professionally funny, being able to use that as a vehicle for talking about some quite, serious stuff that a lot of people will have also been through. It was just really, really enlightening. And you had such a sense of confidence that like, this isn't going to end up getting awkward, because I trust that like, holy moly, if this gets heavy, there's 8 of them there who are ready to like quip their way out of it. But while still allowing the real feelings through. And it was great. It was really, really cool.
So they would talk about very deep stuff, but they would have the comedy to be able to save it and make it comfortable and safe to go on to these darker topics.
That's it, exactly. But it's that same thing we spoke about earlier again, where they have the confidence to let something difficult lie for a little while and not feel the need to like, oh, it's too uncomfortable, I have to make a joke to get through this. It's like, no, we're actually going to listen to each other. We're going to drop those walls. We're going to exchange thoughts about something. But with that trust being built up, I know that if you now make a joke about my mum who passed away, that it's actually going to work because I know that you're in a position of like caring for me in this scenario. You're not just being mean for the sake of it. You're doing this kind of group service of making us all laugh, getting some dopamine back in the system before we go in again for the more difficult stuff. And it sounds like from the description, it could be just like an absolute kind of like sadness porn sort of thing, but it's really not. It was really heartwarming. It was really funny, but it was also just interesting to hear what people are going through and how they dealt with it.
This sounds right up my alley, but this sounds like something that I'm gonna watch and have just oceans more things I want to talk about. So maybe I'll like mention to you after I watch this show. Man, this has been great. Every single part we've covered, this is super interesting. I'm trying to get the 80-20 out of it, but I would just love to eat all the chocolates in this box.
Exactly. Yeah, it's been really, really fun, and would happily do another one at some point in future if more thoughts collect. But yeah, of course, message me anytime about it. We'll keep chatting.
Yeah, fantastic. So I know with time, let's get you rolling. And I'm going to leave us with the final question just to take home and think about. Where is it in your business or your personal life that you're not using humor that you could fit a little bit in there? And what would that do for you?
Okay, I'll think about it. And yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Thanks, George. This has been fantastic.